Hi, I'm Elvis Duran. I'm honored to be Justin's Man of the Hour, an entire hour with just Justin and me talking about relationships and keeping it light and keeping it fun and wondering what our purpose is all about. God, I hope we find it. Got it.
Elvis Duran. Let's get to know you, find out how you've built such an extraordinary career, and give people a run for their money who are tuning in right now. But I got to say thank you for saying yes to joining me on this episode, man.
It's a pleasure. It's good to be here. It's good to be anywhere.
Yeah, I've heard you say that once or twice.
But it's so true. My dad used to say that when I was a kid. It was one of those things, you're like, oh, Dad, stop saying that over and over. And then after my dad passed away, I realized he's nowhere now. And so it's like, he had a point.
Good to be anywhere. Yeah. And I think a lot of it too, when you think about it, especially in a time like this, we're almost like 2.5 years into this thing where, a lot is remote. Every interview I've done on this show has been through a Zoom call. I've watched plenty of your episodes as well. Everything's just remote and virtual. But and I want to talk about that with you a little later too, when it comes to the human connection and how you're able to build such a strong rapport with literally anybody. I feel like you're one of those people who we look at and listen to. It's like, dang, I bet he could talk to like a fly on the wall and make it his best friend. So before we get into all that, though, I know that there's a lot more to Elvis Duran than people think. Meet the microphone or the eye when we watch you. So if you can start, man, I'm curious, and I know a lot of people listening right now are probably curious what your day-to-day looks like. Besides your team, I don't even know who else would understand how you live your explosive day-to-day, from whatever time you wake up to whenever you go to bed. So what does that look like for you?
It's interesting because my day-to-day changes. It depends on if I'm here at home in this studio with this really cheap background. Or if I'm in the city and I'm going into the studio. When pandemic hit, we all got our broadcast kits and were sent home immediately. We didn't even miss one day, and which says a lot about our incredible engineering team. Got home, and I have this house out here in the country. I was only out here maybe once a month for the weekends. I lived in the city, and so I'm like, okay, this is nice. I brought the dogs out, and I'm cooking every day, and pandemic life out here was great. It's a beautiful spot. But it was that connectivity that I thought I wasn't missing. I really was. And you don't realize that until you get back into your office and with your friends and with the people you work with, you realize you really need it. It's that energy you need. And so now, in answer to your question, what is my day like? If I'm out here, I wake up, grab a shower, feed the dogs, let them out. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Grab some coffee. I have a 1-minute commute down the staircase. And even living out here, I am late to work sometimes. I don't know, there's no traffic, but if I'm in the city, I get to the studio about 1/4 till showtime. It's that late. And then walk in, and then we're all together, and we're just hugging each other and probably transmitting all sorts of diseases. But so the routine changes depending on where I am. Yeah. The thing is here, as you and I will experience in a moment, when our show's over, I push leave now on the Zoom, and my best friends I've been with for 4 hours are gone, and it's total silence. In the city, we go out for an early lunch and have cocktails and have fun, So other than that, that's probably the 6 a.m. to 12 noon look of every weekday. Pretty simple.
Yeah. Well, as simple as it was, I feel like it's taken years to build that. You talk about your team already, and I'm already starting to think that you guys have such a dynamic, which is why your show and your brand is so successful now. So if we can go into that, I feel like that's the secret sauce to anybody who wants to be radio personality, actor, model, whatever you want to do, and this being somewhat of a self-development vertical for a podcast. I'm almost curious now, if you're tuning in, I got to thank you for clicking play, first of all, but also with Elvis, can you describe that dynamic of your team? Listen, not many people leave work and say, hey, let's go get lunch and an early, cocktail together after we finished a 4-hour, session.
It's community is what it is, and like I said, when a community is taken away from you, you don't really know how important it is until you finally get a taste of it when it comes back. I work with the best. We're all very good friends. We all rely on each other beyond this show, on more of a personal level. But when we come together, it's just, I remember when the pandemic first started and we would end the show and I would push the leave now button on the Zoom room because we were Zooming 4 hours a day. This is how we do it when at home. And the loneliness I would feel, and I would crave the next day. I would crave being back on Zoom with these people. And I think that's how we all are. And that's how our show has become successful, I believe. Anyone who listens to any audio on their commute in the morning, that's how that audio source became successful, because people need a friend. It's the oldest story on earth, right? People need a friend. People need someone to talk to, someone to listen to. If someone's driving to work in the morning and they're leaving a really crappy relationship at home and looking forward to being at the office to get away from it, or the opposite, they're leaving a great home life to go to a bad office life, we're there on that bridge between the two. We can we have people we call the chemo club who are actually listening to our show while on the way to chemotherapy, which is what a tough day they're having, right?
Oh, I know.
But they rely on us to be there. We are their community. It's like just friendship is all it is. And what we do, our type of audio content distribution, otherwise known as radio, it's such a different medium than any other medium out there. We are live. It's not, most of it's not recorded, and we're in the moment. And you could text me right now and saying, "Hey, what you just said, I don't like what you said," and I can immediately come back to you on this microphone and say, "Oh my God, you just told me you don't like something I said. Let's talk about it." What other medium can you find that? You can't. So community is what it's all about.
Gosh, I love that, because I mean, when we listen to your voice, it's one thing, but then knowing that that's what you hold at the foundation is another. So then I have to ask you now, I mean, if you think about the responsibility that you have as a radio DJ with your team, and as someone who's become this massive personality around the world, how do you handle that? If it's pressure, if it's somewhat of a responsibility that you hold literally in people's ears as they're driving, like you had said, to chemo, how do you handle that?
Well, with honor, I mean, if someone is going to give me 5 minutes to 4 hours of their day every day, I think I owe it to them to say, here's something hopefully you'll like. Look, we have such a diverse listening audience. The age span is from 12 years old to 92 years old. And all these different demographics in between those two ages, what they have in common, that's hard to find. So we just have to kind of throw it out there and use our gut instinct to say, okay, obviously we're keeping them. We're doing really well as far as the ratings go and all that stuff, all that business stuff, which I don't like to think about. But there is a responsibility. My responsibility is this, we have done our best to kind of lead our show away from political strife and political this and that. And it's been tough because someone would say, well, as broadcasters, we have a responsibility to be a voice piece for the things going on in society. And I'm thinking there are so many voice pieces out there. Maybe we should be in the middle somewhere. Maybe we should offer people a place to go when they're tired of hearing people beating the hell out of each other. That's what we do. That's our responsibility.
Wow. Well, that's incredible, because I feel like people are always leaning left or right on something. I had this conversation the other day, and politically or not, it's always going to be one side or the other, and something we get with your show is neither. And so how have you managed to kind of keep it in that, I mean, but objectivity, that's the word, right? Objectivity, that's always been kind of what I would believe to be the foundation of journalism, storytelling, radio, TV, as content's being produced. And so how have you guys managed to be so objective, would you say?
Well, thank you for accusing us of being objective. I don't know. You know what? First and foremost, if you turn to us as a major news source, you're not going to get in-depth news coverage of anything. We do 3 headlines at the top of every hour, and that's about it. And we don't go deeper than that. Our show, someone would argue, does have a lean to it. We're I'm a gay guy when I have an Indian co-host, I have a mother co-host, and I've got, we come from all over the spectrum of beliefs, and we get along with each other. We have some people on our show that are registered Republicans. We have some that are registered Democrats, but we don't cancel each other because we disagree on things. But as you know, we live in a world where if you and I don't agree on all of the boxes, then you're out of my life. I can't do that. I need people to listen to our show. And in doing so, I find it's easier for us to stop down, shut up, and listen to what people have to say. And I may not agree with you, but we can still be friends, and you can still listen to our show and laugh and forget about the BS in your life,
Yeah. It goes back to what you said, everybody needs a friend. I want to get to that a little later too. I feel like we're living in a time where it just seems like everybody's kind of feeling that loneliness syndrome, and a lot of that's the pandemic or what had surfaced up afterwards. But before we get into that, keeping it light and fun. That's your brand, I feel. Correct me if I'm wrong. You have something about the way that you've been able to bring people, like you had said, whether it's the 3 top headlines quickly or you're interviewing a huge artist on the show. There's something about the method there that is keeping it light and fun. Would you say is part of the practice that you've always wanted to, give out to audiences and people?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, keeping it light and fun well, that's the rule of thumb mostly, but I'll give you this story. Then this is going to be anything but light and fun. I remember when I was walking to work to our studios in downtown Manhattan, the morning after there was a school shooting in Florida that left kids and faculty members dead. I'm about to walk into the studio with this microphone, and I have a responsibility to talk about this. How does the goofy, light and fun guy handle this? Well, you don't expect to turn on The Price is Right and expect them to be playing Plinko and then telling you about this awful thing that happened the night before. So we do have a responsibility when it comes to stories like that to reach out, say we understand, show support for families. And I was thinking, well, who are we? Do I really want to start the day off talking about gun control? But we can talk about teachers. And so all the story turned into the faculty members at that school that day that saved kids' lives and kept them together. We decided, well, let's recognize the fact that these educators are more than just going in and opening up textbooks and saying, learn this. I'm going to grade you on it. They're there for many other reasons. These kids have horrible home lives. Maybe they're not getting nutrition at home. They need to come to school to eat. Well, whatever. There's a whole story there. So that's the morning we discovered Donors Choose, this organization where you can donate money. It will go to these teachers' classrooms and help them pay for supplies that school systems can't afford. So we turned a school shooting into a time to let's support the people who were there for these kids when they were going through the worst day of their lives. And so that's the way we can take something that's very serious and turn it into something that is still very serious, but we can help others. And so keeping it light and funny and fresh is what we try to do. But in the real world, you can't do that every day. You know who was a master at that was Mr. friggin' Rogers. I don't know if Mr. Rogers, maybe before your time, I'm not sure, but all the documentaries that came out about him later showed that he would go in and talk about race relations to kids. He would talk about it. He would talk about what it's like having a kid in your school who is in a wheelchair, and he'd have a kid in a wheelchair on his show to talk about these very serious subjects. At the same time, he was teaching love and compassion, and he was Mr. Rogers,
Yeah.
I can't be Mr. Rogers, but I guess we're the modern day attempt at trying to use that as a template. Maybe. I don't know.
I'll accuse you of being the modern day Mr. Rogers then.
No, please don't.
No, I'm kidding.
Sort of like that.
Yeah. Well, the reason I bring up light and fun is just because when people are tuning into something, they almost want that escapism factor, which is essentially what you mentioned earlier, going to chemo, getting away from like a home life that you're not so comfortable with, or maybe you're dealing with something and you just want something else to distract you to a certain extent. And a lot of times with radio, especially your show, you think about the music component too. So I want to get into that really quickly with you as to like the types of music, not only just genres, but the people that you've been able to meet over your entire career and what that has meant to you in terms of your escapism when it comes to music. I just always think music is therapy. And so would you say the same? And then from your experiences, what's been most like the highlight of being able to interview, people who are bringing that music to life?
Well, being a fan of music is a great foundation. And I listen to all types of music, and I can get just as turned on by, Dua Lipa as I can with go back, Aretha Franklin, all of it, I have no pattern when it comes to music taste, But here's something I learned late in my career. I mean, they would say, Elvis, we have Paula Abdul coming in. This is obviously an older show. I'm like, okay, great. What do we talk about? Let's talk about her song. So I would come in, she would come in, I would ask the same questions I would ask all artists. Hey, tell me about your album. Hey, what influenced you to write these songs? Hey, where are you going on concert tour? Okay, thanks for coming in. I never really liked doing interviews until one day I realized that these people who are creating this art have a story behind it. And they can tell you, like having Charlie Puth on to describe how he writes a song. God, how does a human being have a mind like that? I mean, he's insane. You can sing a note. He can tell you exactly what note. He's a beatbox. He's amazing. But then I learned another thing about interviewing these artists is not only can they tell you about the process in which they find the art, you can actually apply their process to your life and find things in your life that can turn you on. And, you know, for all of us who seem to be living this Groundhog Day existence where it's the same thing every day, you wake up, you go to work, you come home, you go to bed. There could be other things you're peppering into your day, and you can learn from these artists and how they create. You can create things for yourself. And I think that during this pandemic, especially, God, you know, either you have been stagnant or you have gone backward and gained weight and become an alcoholic, a functioning alcoholic like me, or or you have moved forward and started side hustle businesses and you're getting creative and you're actually going out for walks and things. And so in interviewing these artists, you learn how they applied their need to create, and you can apply it to yourself. And there's a lesson to be learned with every interview. So my love of music, my love of artists, this is actually a new, like 15-year thing for me. And I've been doing this since I was 14. So that's been many years. I wish I didn't learn so late in life, but
when I listen to you and when I watch you, there's this upbeat sense of passion. And if we could talk about that for a moment, I think passion will always lead to success if you're driving it with ambition. And what I mean by that is, like, if you don't care about it, you will not want to do it. And like you had said, with whoever's experiencing Groundhog's Day, who might be listening to this too, you get to a point where you're like, all right, well, what am I doing? You know, what am I living for? I mean, all of our parents have asked that question to us, like, what's your purpose? What do you want? Or, you know, it could be as your friends or whoever you're around. And so with regard to purpose for you, if you could, and, you know, you don't have to like give a definite answer on this, but if there was a purpose as to what you've done with your career, what would that be?
Purpose is always changing, by the way. It's always evolving. I don't want to get too long-winded, but I'll tell a story quickly. On September 10th, 2001, I didn't know what the hell I was doing with my life. I'm coming in every day. I'm playing the same songs over and over. We're talking about fart jokes, and we're talking cheating on the internet back then. And I was actually considering just quitting what we're doing altogether. On September 11th, 2001, we realized what our purpose is, and that's to serve the community. On September 11th, while we watched before us planes hitting towers and towers coming down and lives being lost, people turned to us. I walked in that morning, every phone line was ringing at 5:30 a.m., people asking, hey, can you help me find my dad? Never came home yesterday. He worked in Tower 2. Hey, we're trying to walk home. We're on the New Jersey Turnpike. Can someone pick us up and take us to Delaware? Hey, we need food to give to people who are going over to Ground Zero to work on recovery. And I'm like, this is our purpose. This is why we're on the air today. This is okay. The day before, it was fart jokes and playing the same song over and over, you know? And I realized at that point there is purpose. And even though we thank God we don't have towers falling and planes flying into buildings right now, you do have people who are driving to work every day who are living a disaster. And my purpose is to like give you a couple of minutes where you can hear a fart joke, or we can talk about something that ignites a fuel or something. So that purpose is there. My purpose is always evolving. And I'll freely admit to you, like right now, I'm 57 years old. I've been doing this morning show for over 25 years at Z100 and now around the world. I'm ready to switch it up.
Yeah.
It needs to be different. I'm not done with it. I'm not ready to hang the headphones up and say goodbye.
Yep.
But I got to find a new level of purpose. And that's what I'm looking for. And it's hard. It's a challenge.
I would
So if you have
imagine,
any idea, call me. I don't know.
If you have
But
ideas, call Elvis.
you need purpose. If you don't have it, like, what's the point?
Mm-hmm.
You have purpose. Look at you. I'm observing your room behind you. Where are you exactly?
My bedroom.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I see a collage of pictures with friends or something over
Oh,
your
yeah.
right.
Yeah.
I see cityscape black and whites over your left shoulder.
Mm-hmm.
I see a lamp in the corner.
Yep.
Is some sort of certificates hanging on the wall. What are those certificates?
University of Tennessee and the International Radio Television Society. Some class.
There's a society. We have a society.
Yeah, I think they tried to recruit you a long time ago. If you've heard the name Joyce Tudor.
Wow.
They do the
I
Giants
didn't
of
know
Broadcasting and all those events, the award shows and stuff.
So let me ask you this. In just this small screen I'm seeing of you, is this you? I mean, obviously you love cityscapes.
What
That's
city
New York.
Is that? Broken out into 3 little canvases.
Right. And you're proud of your accomplishments. You have certificates on the wall.
Yeah, I love Tennessee.
You know, a lot of people get these certificates and they just go, oh, that's nice, and they put them away and never to see them again.
Yeah.
And what story is that collage telling them?
Oh gosh, that's a 10-year-old picture frame that I keep swapping in and out of. There's about 25 pictures in there, just people that I love, friends, family, colleagues. But I leave it right there until I can hang it up.
Okay, so it's taking space, or is it telling me? My point is this.
Yeah.
In this small little square that we're seeing of you,
yeah,
is any of your purpose on the wall behind you?
Yeah, I think connecting to people. That's always been. It's why I think that's why I got into media. But yeah.
So this is why I need to change this. This has got to go. I mean, I love Mercedes. What a wonderful automobile this is. And they've been very good sponsors of ours.
Yeah.
This logo is old. We changed this logo. This logo is
I saw
10 minutes ago.
Yeah.
You have these dumb little, see these little rivets that hold this cardboard together?
Yeah.
It's so
beautiful rivets, by the
way. Oh. Anyway, so having purpose, the reason to actually get out of bed every day.
Yeah.
But more important than that, be satisfied with the day you just had as you get back into bed that night. That's what we're all craving for. That's what we all need. And sometimes if you're so dulled down by masks and living in a COVID world, you forget about your purpose. It's more about survival and baking banana bread. You know, there's got to be more. And so I know I'm not alone with over 4 million people per month leaving their jobs to go to new jobs or to be unemployed. Obviously, people's shift in purpose is changing, right?
Mm-hmm.
So reconnect with your purpose. I know I'm doing it, and it's a scary thing, but fright and excitement, there's a thin line between the two, right?
Yeah. No, fright and excitement. I mean, you mentioned you're kind of on that discovery path right now. And for you, do you think it'll be in radio or media at all? This next adventure? Yeah.
Absolutely. You know, the thing is I work for a company that takes such good care of us. Every resource we need, they're there for us. They support us. They're our cheerleaders. So to walk away from iHeart I don't want to do that, but I know iHeart has other things I can do. So we're trying to figure that out. Maybe in addition to what I'm doing. I don't know. Enough about me.
Are you kidding me? This is your episode. Wait, okay, fine. How about you and the people in your life, you and the people that you've been able to build community with? I take you as a relationship guy just in general, but in order to build real relationships, that's a skill. And you know this because your job is to do that, but not just for the job. I would imagine if you're going out with your team after work to go get lunch and drinks, you also are just good at that in life. And it's something that I wanted to base your episode around just a little bit so that people fully understand. As someone who, take it as an extrovert or introvert, a lot of people struggle to build genuine relationships, especially in an entertainment or media business, for instance, where it's a lot about the competition and how you feel about building a career, and everything's kind of that give and take tug of war. And so all that aside, when you think about building relationships in general, is there like practices or methods that you can help us understand as someone who's so good at it? Because I feel like that's something to be said just about how, I guess, what we can learn from like you talking through how you build relationships.
Well, and I appreciate that. I don't consider myself the guru of anything. I do have an idea as I speak to this guy who's drinking water out of a carton that paying attention to people and being curious about people, noticing little things. Like I've had and sometimes he can get you in trouble. I'm not going to say who it was. I had an artist come in one day, and the way our studio in the city set up, I'm here and the artist is right here. So there's a good camera angle of us talking to each other. And I was looking down at his hands. He had bitten every single nail off of his fingers. Do you bite your nails?
No, I don't.
Yeah. So I included it in the interview. We were talking about, whatever. And I said, by the way, I don't want to embarrass you, but I'm going to talk about something on a little different level. He's like, what's that, Elvis? I said, you bite your nails. Talk about that. Are you nervous? Like, are you a nervous human being? I mean, and he, for a second, felt like he was put on the spot. And for a second, I felt like, well, that was a dumbass question, but it was sort of interesting. And then it opened up a whole new conversation. I was curious about his life. He looked at me after the interview and said, hey, you know what? Thank you for asking me something other than about my dating life and whatever. Yeah, I have anxiety going. We all have different levels of anxiety. He said, I've been biting the living hell out of my nails lately. And he said, you're the only person who's actually pointed that out. And he said, by you saying that, it makes me want to pay more attention to my anxiety and try to like work through it. And I'm like, oh, okay, I'll take credit for it. I'll take your copay. Bring it. But I think, being curious about people. And of course, this is an interview directed at me, so I'm talking a lot. And I'm used to being the one who interviews. And so I used to have a fright of being interviewed because I don't want to say anything about me. I want to talk about you. But there is an interviewer in all of us. And I think if you're working in accounting or you're a nurse or you're working the front lines in a hospital or you're a cashier, so you should be interviewing your friends, and like you'll find out so much about them, and they will look at you and go, wow, you're a good listener, even though you may not be.
No way. You bring up a good point. I think both of us have probably been told that as we ask questions to folks. This was a couple years ago now that I remember hearing that I guess the common person, anybody wants to talk about themselves. So it's interesting that you didn't, and probably still today, don't like to talk about yourself. Why is that? Is it because you've always interviewed folks, or is it just, something instinctual?
Well, I guess laying it all out there for many years for me was difficult to do. I would host a show with 5 or 6 characters around me, and I was always just kind of like the master of ceremonies. I would just turn to them, and I really never talked about my dating life. I was never really out on the radio. It wasn't because I was closeted. It was just I didn't talk about my life at all. And then when I started going through crazy dating times, I realized there is kind of an interesting bond you can make with people by sharing your dating disaster stories, and they will relate. I don't know. I've gotten better at talking about myself, but I never ever want to be like, God, he never shuts the fuck up. Hey, guy, sorry about my language. But by the way, you're a great interviewer. I don't know if anyone's ever told you that.
Hey, wait, I'm gonna save that for the next 25 years of my life. You said that, so I appreciate it so much.
No, but you're really great, and I'm like taking notes on some things. If you're watching this podcast, he's doing some things that I think are very clever. Saying, hey, you know what, Elvis, you are this, this, and this. I'm going to get to that in a minute, but right now, let's talk about this. So you're like foreshadowing a conversation we're about to have in a few minutes. That's a cool technique. I don't know if we should be talking. Are we letting people see behind the curtain? I don't know. No, you're really good at what you do.
Thanks. No, that means so much. I've only been doing it for a little bit, and I've been watching people like you and trying to get into this stuff. So it's been, I've had to listen to your 2-hour, it was like the on-demand episodes that I would have to listen to because New Yorkers don't just drive around, right? You have to get on a podcast and get the on-demand.
Right.
But to your point, I think that there's like, when you're trying to build relationships in general, like even us here, there's a specific rapport that happens in order for me to get, a good interview with you. And full transparency, I've said this many times, I always have a run of show sitting right here with an additional side of notes on the computer screen. And I take the Zoom call with Elvis and I just shrink it to the top of the screen.
Oh, wow.
And I'm,
you prepare.
Oh, 100%.
Wow.
And you probably can appreciate this, and you live this. you could prepare 25 fucking questions, research the hell out of Elvis Duran, and you still will never get to half of the meat of what you had researched. It's always good to have known, right? Or having had called your former publicist. Like I felt like there was things I wanted to know first, but as we start talking, I would have never gotten that story out of you about 9/11, right? Or 9/10 turned to 11. And then, now you're starting to give us a little bit more insight as to how you don't want to be interviewed. Those aren't things that I could have ever prepared. So first of all, thank you for saying that, because it allows us to get to know you better, which is the whole point of this podcast. To be honest with you, we've had several guys on the show who have the accolades out the ass, and have been on stages here, and been in movie premieres there, and it's always the best conversation like what we're having right now, when you don't, like, you could prepare like you had said, but I don't ever go strictly off this run of show.
It's always good to have something to rely on in case the person you're interviewing is asleep. Because we all have,
yeah,
a point. Two of my favorite interviewers of all time are Howard Stern and the late Larry King. I don't know. A lot of people aren't familiar with Larry King. He was an interviewer on CNN for 1,000 years, whatever, and he's been around for 1,000,000 years, 1,000 million, whatever number you want to put in front of the word years.
Yeah.
Larry King would have a guest on every night, and I guarantee you, he only had one question to start the entire interview.
I believe it.
And then he would listen to what they said and their answer, and then he'd respond by asking a question based on their answer. And that would go on for an entire hour. It's like playing tennis. They would just kind of rally. And unbelievable. Howard is an incredible interviewer on a whole different level. Howard Stern, and this is my opinion, some people may not like him, his interviews, but in my opinion, when people go in to be interviewed by Howard, there's a level of nervousness. So they're on guard. They think Howard's going to say something and kind of embarrass them, whatever. So they're paying attention to Howard. Howard diffuses all of that and gets really, really down to the foundation of this person. And I used to listen to Howard on the way home from work, and they would replay his show. And I was sitting in my parking lot, in my driveway for hours listening to his show after the show. His interview technique is just pretty incredible because he diffuses people's anxieties. And then, for instance, I'll get a note from a publicist saying, hey, artist is coming in. They're going through a tough breakup. The whole world knows about it. Don't bring that up. Also, they had, they're going to court about this and this and this. Don't bring that up. So what I try to do is just make them feel so relaxed. They bring it up. They bring up that stuff. And so, look, like you've done a great job at making me feel really relaxed. I'll talk about anything with you. So I think in interviewing people, that's important. You got to make them relax, and they'll tell you whatever they feel comfortable telling you sometimes.
That's right. Yeah. And I think that's, from my little experience here, I feel like that's exactly what happens. And so much of it too is knowing that you have the responsibility and the platform to make them as comfortable as possible, and then it'll go wherever it goes. But nowadays, I want to ask you this though, especially since you're in media, and if you're listening right now, you can probably attest to this if you're on Twitter or Instagram every single day. But if you think about all of the noise that's out there with the headlines, the exclusives, and I'm good friends with Pete Weber, who is the former Bachelor, and it's like every time I see a headline of him, it's just a random article from our friends at these entertainment outlets. And so I'm like, what are we doing here? So when you think of storytelling or interviewing folks, especially on the radio show, is it have you ever gotten confused about whether or not you wanted to just grab the exclusive or just like hype up what was happening? Do you know what I mean? Like instead of just actually trying to have a conversation and get something that maybe no one else is saying.
Well, and we were talking before we started the podcast here, we were talking about my publicist, Stephen Levine, who I'd never had a publicist before. I hired him away from an agency, and he worked for me solely for me. Yeah. His job was to come in and help with artist relations, get the artists in to interview them, but also bring in an extra or Entertainment Tonight, whatever, with cameras on the side. So when the artist would come in, we would talk to them, and then we'd also interview them for them, whatever. And also at the end of the interview, he would type up all the headlines and send them out, hoping we would get run.
Yeah.
Oh, well, Joe Jonas was on with Elvis Duran today, and he said, oh my God, can you believe he said this? And it got to the point where I'm like, I don't want to chase headline. That's not what I want to do. I don't need to feel relevant because I'm being picked up by all these news organizations because I got a headline from Joe Jonas. I don't need it. I don't want it. And so you see that though. So a lot of times you'll see artists being, what do you want to say, taken advantage of.
Sure.
Because an interviewer somewhere pushed them into a corner and got them to admit something that they probably shouldn't be talking about. I never want to do that. I never want to pull a salacious interview on someone. It's just because I want them to come back. And I don't. And besides, they get the headline. I don't. Just because it says on Elvis Duran Show, that doesn't say anything.
Right. The reason I ask that too is because as people start stepping into journalism and media, a lot of times there's that discrepancy of whether or not, you could imagine a red carpet. So say you're walking at a gala and I wanted to interview you. This is like 2 years ago now. It was always like the publicist would stand there and be like, nah, we're good. Right. Or like based on the outlet and who they have the relationship with, which is like phase 2 of what you just said. You have the one thing about making people feel comfortable in a relationship. Then you have the other part of it, which is, can we keep this going and for how long? Because the industry's small. And as you continue to grow and, in general, especially with artists, if one person takes off today, odds are they're still going to be pretty relevant later. And if you want them back on your show or my podcast or whatever, a lot of that's relationship building, sometimes just with the publicist, sadly, but like also with the talent themselves. But again, anyway, for that insight, thank you, because I feel like a lot of people don't even bring those things up in general because it's just like the hidden conversation no one has in terms of how these conversations get stirred. So if you're listening, that was a whole educational segment I did not expect to have with ED over here. So, but do you think there's ever been one thing, I want to move on here with you. There's one thing that you've stayed true to about yourself. Could be something tangible, could be something that you just remind yourself of that you've held on to all these years.
There is, and there's a problem with it. There's an issue. There's a challenge. My number one foundational headline is be authentic. But at the same time, my authentic, I'm always rediscovering. It's changing. What I thought was my authentic self 2 years ago is not my authentic self now. So you have to stop down every once in a while and try to remember, like, who am I? Like, what is it about me that's so important about me? What do I need to be taking stock in today? So being your authentic self is so important, especially in this day and age where people have their BS detectors on and they know if you're full of crap or not. And I think that's it. Be you. I mean, because no one else wants to be you. It's like,
that's so true. As you've held on to that, then is there people specifically in the industry or in your personal life that you keep super close that have kind of helped to reassure you that you've been able to stay your authentic self?
You know what? Several, but one in particular, his name is Dennis Clark. The funny story about Dennis was when I was doing mornings at Z100 in the very beginning of our morning show life, we weren't doing well. We weren't doing well in the ratings at all. And that's when corporate called and said, we're going to bring in a consultant. And that's when, you're on the phone. Oh, shit. Okay. That means it's now or never. You gotta pull this around and make it work.
Yeah. So
Dennis came in and he really, really gave our entire show a lesson on being your authentic self. And don't do things on your show that aren't you. Just because it works, it's a formulaic bit or whatever that works down the street, doesn't mean you do it. It may not work for you. And also Dennis was great at fighting back at management that was telling us they wanted our show to sound a certain way. He would, even though they paid him, he would go to them and go, no. You don't want that because that's not them.
Yeah.
And so Dennis Clark is still my best friend. We still work together all these years later. He's coming in again next week. And he really is just a fantastic, like I said, friend I rely on for many reasons, personal and professional. But he's the one who actually taught us the value in knowing your role building. We would sit in a conference room, maybe 4 of us on the show. Okay, Elvis, who are you? Well, I'm this guy. I do that. What are you famous for? Well, I don't know if I'm famous for it, but I love doing this. I love doing that. And we would do this role building for each one of us. And he'd go, okay, here's who you are. This is what your listeners expect of you. Don't do opposite of any of these things. Just go on there and give them nothing but these 5 benchmarks about who they want you to be, and that matches up with who you really are and your authentic self. And I'm like, God, what an idea. Stay in your lane, basically. And it was the best advice I ever got as far as that. But make sure whatever you do while you're in your lane is the real you. It's not fabricated. It's all authentic. So Dennis Clark is the answer to your question.
Dennis Clark. Wait, what about you said it, stay in your lane. And I think that I mentioned earlier about there being a lot of noise, not just with headlines and stuff, but I think in general in today's time, there's so much noise. How many people are trying to get away from their phones, and how many people are trying to just make sure that they're not doing too much and saying yes to too much. Do you take yourself as a yes man?
I used to. Go further with that. Give me an example. Give me something to hang on.
You are someone that I would imagine everybody's wanting attention from. So be it a meeting, a Zoom call like this that we blocked an hour for, or your friends wanting to go out for a drink, someone wants to take you to a Broadway show, someone else wants to go, so there's a lot of asks, I'm sure, that are being put in front of you. And so you mentioned it, you used to be a yes man, but when did that change?
You know what? And this is one of those things I can blame it on because I'm getting older. The older you get, the less friends you have, and the less times you say yes. And I kick myself by not learning the power of the word no earlier in my life. Look, a lot of people are afraid if they say no to things, they're going to lose out on future possibilities or opportunities. And I'm like, well, I think my opportunities I'm receiving now are fine. I don't have to say yes to anyone and everyone. When I heard that you wanted me to be on this podcast, for instance, I said, well, let me go look it up. And I saw the quality of the people you were interviewing, and I saw the way and I heard the way you were interviewing them with a very respectful and curious way. And your story, getting them to tell their stories, I think is quite an art that you have honed, even though you may not know it. But yeah, I think you know it. So I say no to podcasts all the time, but yours was different. So I did a little I'm And so that's what I'm doing in life. And I want everyone to do that. Before you say yes, stop and go, well, wait, do I really want to do it? And if I'm on the fence, let's see if I can get something out of it. Not only just meeting someone new who's going to ask me questions that will make me think about myself a little more. And you've done that as you drink out of your carton of water. When did water cartons become a thing? I know they're everywhere.
It's a boxed water.
It's much better for the environment than plastic, so I applaud you.
No, listen, they just have a sustainability effort of planting a tree. I know the marketing friend, so I was like, hey, I want to try some of that out. Thank you for you don't have to say all that. You're the best. I literally been watching you for so long, and I think I've learned a lot through you too, how you interview folks. And the reason I ask you, particularly when it comes to just not just around purpose, which I think a lot of people can learn from what you said with that, but it sounds like you're very intentional as the years have gone on. So where do you feel like intention then has allowed you to bring out a better quality of your life? And what I mean by that is, as you're researching the men of the hour before you came on too, it's that energy and that intention it takes to make a decision, I would think adds quality. Not saying this podcast is adding quality to your life by any means, but I'm just saying in general, like there's something there that one could then lead to another. Would you agree?
Absolutely. And I'm not really a sports fan, but there is the sports analogy as far as intention goes. The quarterback throws you the ball, you have an intention. It's clearly at the end of that field and it's beyond that line, right? Under the goalpost. That's your intention. How you get there is the game. And who's standing in your way, what static is bogging you down, what criticisms from people that don't matter is making you stop and second guess yourself. The intention, you have to always focus on what your intention is all about. My intention today in doing a podcast with you is I get to meet a new friend. I get to be asked questions by someone who knows what they're doing as far as questions go. And it actually makes me stop and think, okay, well, I never thought of it that way. And these are connections. This is a community. Community is always my intention in succeeding at it. My intention is also cutting the riffraff out of my life. And
Yeah.
as rude as that sounds, it's like, how many things do I do per day that are just not really moving me forward? How many people am I allowing into my circle that really are just kind of holding me back from having thoughtful time for myself to like think where I'm going in life? Intention is such a powerful word. I wish people really, really paid attention to intention.
Yeah. The reason I ask again was what I was trying to get back to later in this conversation with you that we kind of talked about at the beginning, which was literally just this idea that when you're not connecting with people, it's going to be really difficult to have any form of quality, I would imagine. And the reason I say it like that is because when you were discussing just a community build and how that's impacted the show in a positive way and how it's built the community of your coworkers and what I would call your work fam, there's so much there that it has to be intentional, and you don't have to say it. And I want your thoughts on this because I take you as someone who's very open and honest, because as I'm drinking this box water, you've mentioned it and I was like, nobody else has mentioned on the show. But as you are building, and I love talking relationships with you because it's the foundation, right? You had said community, that's all relationships. And it's why you were able to open up the way that you did when you found out that talking about dating actually was a huge common denominator for maybe your guests, maybe the team, maybe the people that listen to you. And so back to relationships for a moment. When you think of letting someone know that you're intentionally trying to be their friend, or that, hey, I love spending time with you, or this is really working for the business, let's keep going. Is there a specific protocol you would say to making sure the person is reassured that that relationship is being built at all?
Well, it's a mutual connection. I can find someone who I find extremely interesting in life and go, hey, let's be pals.
Yeah.
Let's build a fortune together. Let's go out and eat. They may not see the same thing in me, and it may not have anything to do with me. It may be where they are in life or whatever. But I believe that there's an underlying current that connects us. To use an old tired example, there is a root system beneath the forest that connects all these trees, and where they actually communicate with each other through their roots, right? And they have community. They serve community that way. I think we as human beings are the same way. I do think there is an electricity that bounces back and forth between people. Either it's there or either it's not. Relationships. We have relationships. This is another way to look at relationships. We have relationships with everything. I have a relationship with food. I have a relationship with money. I have a relationship with my house. I have a relationship with my husband, with my dogs. I have a relationship with my car. I have a relationship. We have these relationships. And so it's about being aware. There is a meaning. I'm coming to a point, believe me or not. We need to be more aware in this world. If you're walking down the street and you're not aware of this really cool flower that's growing in this flower bed over here, you're not aware of this beautiful park with these ducks and these geese, you don't take a moment to kind of look at them and be aware of them. To be aware of anything in life, you have a relationship with it. Yeah. It's the same with people. If I just walk past you on a city street with 10,000 other people, there's no relationship going there. But if I stop down and think, my God, this guy drinking the boxed water, walking down the street, he's a person. He has parental stories, I'm sure. He has stories about his schooling and people he's dated. You have to add value to people and understand that they have value other than skin and bones walking past you. That's the beginning of a relationship. You may never go further than that, but you have started a relationship with a total effing stranger. Yeah. Now, if you go past that, you become curious about that person. Hey, you with the boxed water, come here. You look familiar. I've seen you somewhere. Who are you? Oh, I do a podcast. And this. Oh, we now have a relationship because I was aware of you. I connected with you. And now we are now on the launch pad to take off to outer space, or we may fizzle and never talk to each other again. Yeah. But being aware of people helps set your intention on what do you want for the future with that person. It's all interconnected. And I know it's kind of a heady thing. Maybe not everyone's understanding it, but I don't know. I think we walk by possibilities and don't recognize them every day because we're not living a life of being aware of other beings and other things.
And you said it. That's the nail on the head right there. When you walk past and you don't see the possibilities. I would say opportunity, but it's not always gonna be an opportunity. Maybe it's a possibility to maybe just make someone else your new friend. And that's why I think that's why I love Elvis Duran, because that's so special of a person to be able to settle with that your whole life, or most of your life, whenever you figured that. When did you start realizing that was you know, you wanted
It
to be
was
more
late.
aware of people?
It was late in life, you know. It was after a bad relationship, and I realized that I remember sitting here thinking my life is sucking ass. I hate life.
Mm,
I don't hate it. It's just my life is colorless and tasteless. I have nothing going on. And I
mm.
realized at that moment, I'm like, wait a minute, I'm a good guy. I kind of like me. And then I ran to the I ran to the bathroom. I kid you not. I looked in the mirror and I looked at myself and said, I love you.
You have
and,
to.
and I started laughing like I'm doing now, because it was such a stupid but very important moment in my life.
Mm,
And that was not that long ago, in answer to your question. I feel like a schmuck because I didn't start learning these things earlier in life. But what's done is done. No regrets, you know.
yeah, no, I get that. Wait, that's so funny. You're so goofy in the best ways. I mean, did you grow up this way? Is that always been part of your DNA?
I I come from an interesting family. My dad was always a fun storyteller. My mother
Mm,
was very prim and proper, and but very respectful for other people. I lived in a southern family full of denial. We never talked about family skeletons. It's
uh,
still difficult challenge for me sometimes to talk about things on an emotional level, unless I come to the brink of total destruction. But I'm getting better at it, and I don't think it really matters as much when you discover it's good to be aware of people and understand
yeah,
you're in.
right.
I think it's just better to recognize you have it and it's on
Mm,
board now. You're now wired with it. It's now a part of your DNA, as you say, and take
yeah.
that ball and run with it. Sports analogy.
Sports and hey, and take yourself as not a sports fan, and we got two examples right here on this very show. Wow, we're inching closer. We're like to the final minutes of this podcast episode with you, Elvis. And if you're listening again, you could have stayed on any other show. And the fact that you were able to hear this raw version of Elvis, I take this as the raw Elvis Duran, to be honest with you. And I'm so grateful for it. I want to ask you one final question, and then we're going to get to all the final announcements and projects. I want at least, what you're excited about, as you continue your career. But this final question for you, you said you drank coffee at the very top of this when I asked you what your day to day was, and that you walk the dog, and that you get up and then you start your day, and it typically starts at 6 a.m. So my question for you is, it has to be the most important one. You know, are you putting milk in your coffee? And if so, is it almond or oat?
I don't put anything in my coffee. Nothing. Sometimes I'll put an ice cube in there to get it down to a little more tolerable temperature. What kind of question is that? You were
Just
doing so well for 53 minutes.
uh, wait, hold on. That's the real question for you.
Coffee and no, I
Wait,
like
that
coffee
we
black.
I might listen. I don't know how, and we could talk about this offline, but I'll do it black, and I'll throw like one little ice cube in there, and I stopped putting milk in it too. So that's why I was curious. Who's still putting milk in their coffee, because it only
A
makes your
lot of
day
people.
fat.
I have friends who drink milk with a drop of coffee. Like
Yeah,
my producer Nate, it's
yeah.
pure cream with like a little bitty brown dot in the middle of it. That's his coffee. I'm like, what are you doing?
So people that wanted a little bit of cereal with their milk, right?
Exactly.
Right, same type of folks. Okay, the real question, the real last question for you, Elvis. What do you, Elvis Duran, want to be remembered for after everything we just covered in the past 54 minutes?
Oh, the legacy question. I actually have an answer for this. All I'm asking for in remembering me is, after I'm dead and gone and I'm ashes spread all over wherever they're spreading my ashes, I want someone to go, hey, remember we used to ride to work together every day? We listened to that show with
Mm,
that guy with those people. Remember? Yeah, I like that show a lot. That was great. What was his name?
mm,
I don't know. Let me Google it. That's the legacy I'm going to leave behind.
yeah.
That's it. I don't. I'm not here. I'm not curing cancer. I'm not. I'm not doing brain surgery. I just
Mm,
want someone to remember that we were a part of their lives that they enjoyed for
mhm,
maybe 10, 15 minutes a day. And that's it. That's the only legacy I'll be happy with.
mm.
It's cool.
If you heard all of that, you probably got cold chills down your spine like I did, because here's what I say to you, Elvis, and you can knock me later for saying it. You also mentioned that you have a chemo crew of people that drive to work to
Yeah.
go to chemotherapy, and they listen to you and they engage with you. And I'm going to combat what you said. Although you're not curing cancer, you are a part of their recovery and their experience to hopefully get through cancer. So I have to tell you that, because that's exactly why you are coined what I would call a man of the hour. But most people would just say you're super successful and everybody loves you. And Elvis, I can't thank you enough for spending the last 56 now minutes with me, almost hour. Again, y'all, I literally blocked off an hour, and I'm glad you didn't shrink it to 30 or 15, because you're so busy. And I really, if you listen to this, I hope you enjoyed this conversation and really learned something from it. So Elvis, thank you.
By the way, I'm not that busy, to be
You said
honest.
well, listen, all right, we're going to go into round two, everybody, for the next hour. So we're going to keep Elvis right here on the Zoom call.
People say, and I guess, I don't know. It's very nice that people assume that I'm really busy. I'll look at my calendar. What am I doing today? I'll tell you right now what I'm doing today.
There we
I
go.
have a podcast at 10 a.m. It's called Men of the Hour. And then at 4 o'clock, we have a Microsoft Teams meeting with iHeart Digital, which I'm not looking forward to. But between now and then, at 1 o'clock, I have an interview. Oh, they're asking me questions about my friend Bethany Frankel, because they're doing a cover story for her for, I think, Inc. magazine or something like that.
Mm,
That's my day.
that's
It's
your
my
day.
entire day. I've got dogs to walk.
I was just going to say.
I may, I don't know. You know what? Pam and Tommy is playing on Hulu. I may watch some of that.
That's it. I'm glad
That's
you
my
can do those things. You've gotten, well, listen, and then you got plenty of time to work on every other angle of Elvis, it sounds like, too, and enjoy the family and the dogs and the coffee with no milk. So
I'm milkless.
Elvis Duran, thank you seriously so much for this entire conversation and trusting me with it.
That hour went by extremely fast. Thank you. Thank you for asking such incredible questions. Thank you for making me think today.
Oh.
Hopefully I won't think tomorrow. So I got it all out of the way today.
You're the best.